I always thought we were the kind of couple people envied. We had the inside jokes, the shared playlists, the weekend coffee ritual that everyone on Instagram thought was goals. His name was Noah, and for 2 years I genuinely believed he was my person. We met in college, both majoring in marketing, both dreaming of moving to New York to work in the same industry. He was charming in that easy, boy next door kind of way, and I fell for him fast. He was attentive, funny, always checking in on me, always saying how lucky he was. For a long time, I believed every word, but one small mistake changed everything. It started innocently enough. Noah came over one Friday night to watch a movie. He fell asleep halfway through, his phone lighting up on the couch beside him. Snapchat notification. Normally, I would have ignored it. Trust was something I prided myself on, but something about the way his screen lit up with a heart emoji next to the name made my stomach twist. It wasn't that I suspected anything specific. It was just a gut feeling, the kind that whispers quietly, something isn't right. The next morning, he left early for work, and when I sat down to clean up the living room, I noticed his phone sitting on the armrest. He must have forgotten it in his rush. And here's where my downfall began. He was still logged into Snapchat. I stared at that little yellow ghost icon for a full minute, my heart pounding so hard it felt like I could hear it. Curiosity, or maybe instinct, took over. I tapped the app. His account opened right away, and the first thing I saw was the message thread with the same name I'd seen last night, Suf. The chat was pinned to the top, marked with a pink heart. I clicked it, and in that moment, my world started unraveling. There were dozens of saved snaps, selfies, flirtatious messages, even videos. They weren't just friendly exchanges. They were intimate, suggestive, full of "I miss you" and "last night was amazing." My hands shook as I scrolled. He had been seeing her for months, meeting up behind my back, using the same excuses I'd never questioned. Work late, gym time, guys' night. I sat there frozen, staring at messages from the night before, where he told her, "I wish I could fall asleep next to you instead." The irony hit me so hard I almost laughed. I was right there, asleep next to him, while he was confessing love to someone else. The rage didn't come right away. First came disbelief, then the slow, burning realization that every kind word, every gesture, was part of a lie. My phone buzzed. It was a text from him. "Forgot my phone. Can you bring it by later?" My first instinct was to throw it out the window, but then something darker took root inside me. A plan. I wasn't going to confront him right away. No. That would be too easy, too merciful. If Noah wanted to play games, I would show him what it meant to lose. I backed out of the app, took screenshots of everything, every snap, every message, every video, and sent them to myself. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt a quiet, icy clarity. By the time I handed his phone back that afternoon, he had no idea that I knew. I smiled, acted normal, even kissed him goodbye when he left. He texted me that night like nothing happened, and I played along, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was already setting the stage. I wasn't going to just expose him. I was going to make sure everyone saw the person he really was. Noah had a reputation. Everyone at our college adored him. Teachers, friends, his co-workers at the internship he bragged about. He was the good guy, the one everyone trusted. But now, I had the truth, and it was only a matter of time before the world did too. Over the next few days, I gathered everything I could: photos, proof of where he said he was versus where he really went. I learned that Suf wasn't some random girl. She worked with him. They'd been flirting since last spring. The more I dug, the worse it got. I found out she had no idea about me either. She thought he was single. That made it even better, because now, I didn't just want revenge, I wanted justice. I remember staring at his perfect, smiling Instagram one night, full of captions about love and loyalty, and something inside me snapped. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore, it was performative. He'd built this image of the perfect boyfriend, and I was the foundation he stood on while he lied to everyone's face. I decided I was going to take that foundation out from under him, piece by piece, until the whole thing collapsed. But I had to be careful. I couldn't make him suspicious yet. So I started small little things, subtle hints, a few vague posts on my story that made people wonder. Noah was so confident, so sure I'd never find out, that he didn't notice the shift in my tone. Not yet, But the day of reckoning was coming. And when it did, I'd make sure he never forgot it. I started with what I could control. The narrative people already believed about Noe, his polished posts, the curated coffee dates, the carefully captioned photos where he looked effortless and sincere. My strategy was slow, surgical, and psychological. If I ripped the bandage off too quickly, people would rally around him out of shock and sympathy. If I hinted too vaguely, they'd dismiss me as jealous. So I crafted a pattern of crumbs that only someone paying close attention would follow. First, I created a digital trail that contradicted everything he'd told me about his nights out. I compared timestamps on his working late check-ins with location tags from his tagged friends, and I found inconsistencies: bars when he said meetings, apartments when he'd claimed overtime. I took screenshots, cross-referenced receipts he'd bragged about with the credit card transaction alerts I'd salvaged from saved emails, and built timelines that fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. Then I started to pry at the seams of his social circle. People assume they know their friends, and they hate the idea that they might be wrong. I messaged a few of his closest college friends, innocent, curious, a little worried, asking if they'd noticed Noah acting differently. I worded everything as if I needed support, not ammunition. When they replied with surprised, defensive answers, I'd send a casual screenshot of something tiny, a late-night text he'd sent to someone else, a snapshot of him leaving a building that wasn't the office. I wasn't accusatory. I was concerned. The goal wasn't to shame outright, but to seed doubt. Meanwhile, I reached out to Sif with a message that wasn't a confrontation, but an offer of one-on-one honesty. I wrote as Diana, calm, composed, withholding outrage, and told her I wanted to meet to clear the air. To my surprise, she agreed. When we met, she cried into her hands and told me she had no idea he was in a relationship. She thought Noah was single, that whatever they had was real. She showed me texts I hadn't seen, photos of Noah with flowers, messages about moving in together. Her vulnerability was a weapon I hadn't expected to wield. She became an ally not because she was spiteful, but because she felt betrayed in a different way. Together, we fleshed out the pattern of his lies from two angles: mine, from the domestic life he cultivated, and hers, from the secret life he sold as genuine. With Seth's help, I discovered something else: small payments from Noah to a number that matched a delivery service, receipts for gifts to her apartment, and a calendar entry he'd forgotten to delete that read D9:30 on dates he'd told me he was at work. Each tiny piece of corroborating evidence made the larger picture undeniable. I documented everything meticulously, knowing that a single mistake could let him paint me as obsessive. Next, I targeted his image at work. Noah was proud of his internship at a boutique firm. It was where he'd built his hard-working guy persona. I dug into his public-facing work, campaign drafts, presentations he'd shared on LinkedIn, and found a few careless, inoffensive slides. I then did something risky. I emailed a senior at the firm, not with accusations, but with a query about a merged file that included one of Noah's photos and an internal memo that suggested someone had been taking liberties with client time. The reply came weeks later, polite but curious. I had planted a seed, and corporate curiosity was its own avalanche. I also began to infiltrate the micro-communities that adored him: the morning run group where he posted PR-friendly photos, the alumni page where he was always complimented for his dedication, the mutual friends who'd never questioned his character. I started posting subtle, cryptic things on my story, snippets of my routine that hinted at distance. A photo of a cup of coffee with a caption about learning to drink alone, a quote about seeing someone's true colors. People noticed. Comments trickled in: concerned, confused, curious. Noah reacted with the expected performance: a loving comment, a meme, a public display that reassured his audience he was still playing the part. That meant my timing had to be immaculate. The next move was the one I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my head, but it had delayed because of its audacity. I anonymously sent a package to his work, a neatly wrapped box containing a printed photo from his Snapchat chats with Seth, along with timestamps and a small note that said simply, "You owe people the truth." I didn't sign it. I watched from a distance as the rumor spread someone had received something. People whispered in the hallways. Emails circulated quietly. Noah's confident smile faltered in meetings. He was questioned by a manager who asked if everything at home was okay, if it was affecting his work. He lied. Of course. He doubled down. In that moment, I saw a crack where before there had only been a mirror of bravado. But the plan almost backfired in a way I hadn't anticipated. Noah, sensing the heat, tried to flip the script. He accused me subtly, to the right audience, of stalking. He posted a vague story about privacy and boundaries that painted him as the victim of an invasive partner. Mutual friends asked if there was more to the story. Some defended him automatically. I could have reacted emotionally and ruined everything. Instead, I let him dig himself deeper. Every time he lashed out, he left new evidence. He overshared to prove his innocence, sent private messages meant to rally allies, and in one desperate move he forwarded a screenshot of my saved notes where I'd written timelines and lists to a group chat with a caption suggesting I was unstable. That, ironically, was his undoing. In forwarding that screenshot, he revealed not only the level of his own dishonesty but also the breadth of the lies he'd told to cover them. People could now see the contrast between my calm documentation and his scattershot reactions. The turning point came on a Thursday when a co-worker of his, someone who'd never spoken to me before, approached Sif with a question about a missed team event. Sif, now furious and empowered, responded with the receipts, the messages, and the dates. That co-worker forwarded everything to HR. Noah's good guy shield finally shattered, not because of one dramatic confrontation, but because of a cascade of corroborated details from multiple sources: my timeline, Sif's messages, the delivery receipts, and the office note. HR called him in. He called me first. I answered a voicemail where he sounded small, pleading, a tone I'd never heard from him. He begged me not to make him look bad, to give him a chance to fix things. I listened without speaking, letting the silence on my end be its own answer. After the HR meeting, there was a flurry of whispers. People I barely knew stopped me at parties and in hallways, their eyes filled with the same mix of pity and curiosity. Some avoided me outright. The support I'd expected from certain friends evaporated. Social alliances reformed faster than I could map them. Then came a twist I hadn't seen coming. Sif emailed me a message with a simple line. He texted me tonight saying he's leaving. Attached was a screenshot where Noah told her he was planning to move 3 states away for a job opportunity that would start immediately. It looked like cowardice. It looked like escape. But buried in the screenshot was another message from Noah to Sif. We'll be careful. That phrase lingered like smoke. Careful about what? Careful about being seen together? Careful about the story he told? The ambiguity gnawed at me. I realized that while I had been dismantling his public image, Noah had not been idle. He was planning something that might make his disappearance look noble, a career move, or worse, a calculated final act designed to win sympathy. I knew that I had to act faster and smarter, not just to ruin him, but to protect myself from whatever his next move might be. The pieces were aligned, the people were watching, and Noah, cornered, was dangerous in a way he hadn't been when he was comfortable. I could feel the momentum shift like a tide. The next steps would need to be decisive, irreversible. I had baited the trap, and now, with every friend who doubted and every shred of evidence stacked against him, the trap was about to spring. I took a breath and started typing the long email I'd been delaying, one that would compile everything into a single narrative anyone could understand. As I hovered over the send button, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I opened it and read one line that froze the blood in my veins. You don't know the whole story. The text came from an unknown number, but I knew immediately it was Noah. There was no mistaking the cadence of that one sentence, the quiet arrogance beneath the feigned mystery. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my pulse quick and shallow, wondering what he thought he could possibly say to justify himself now. I didn't respond. I blocked the number, but unease settled in anyway. He was trying to get in my head again, twisting reality like he always had. For 2 days, nothing happened. Then little things began to feel off. A classmate mentioned they'd heard Noah's side of the story, that I'd hacked his accounts out of jealousy, that he'd tried to end things months ago, but I couldn't handle it. It wasn't just gossip. He was rewriting history, crafting a narrative where he was the victim of my obsession. The problem was, his version was believable to people who didn't know the truth, and that was dangerous. I needed to take control again before his version spread too far. So I finished that email. Every screenshot, every date, every timestamp lie. I sent it to HR at his office, to two of his professors who'd written him recommendations, and to the student organization where he volunteered as a mentor. It was brutal but factual. I didn't exaggerate a thing. Within hours, chaos erupted. HR launched a formal review. His internship was suspended, and I knew I'd hit him where it hurt. His reputation. But then, something strange happened. Sif texted me in a panic that night. She just received an anonymous message too. Photos of her and Noah together. Intimate ones, clearly taken without her consent. "You don't know the whole story," the message read again. I felt my stomach drop. I realized that Noah wasn't just trying to defend himself. He was trying to destroy both of us. He was unraveling. Maybe he thought if he made us both look unstable, no one would believe our side. It was manipulative and desperate, and it only confirmed what I already knew. Noah's pride was the only thing he truly cared about. I stayed up until dawn thinking. I knew I couldn't just expose more of his lies. That would turn this into a public circus. I needed something more decisive, something that would end his control entirely. I started digging deeper, not into his personal life this time, but into his professional one. I remembered how smug he'd been about a marketing pitch he'd worked on, an ad campaign his firm was testing for a major brand. He'd shown me slides months ago, proud of how clever it was. But as I compared his presentation to public work from another agency, I noticed something disturbing. They were almost identical. The slogans, even the layout, nearly plagiarized. I checked the timestamps, the metadata from the files I still had access to through shared drives, and it was undeniable. Noah had copied the work, passed it off as his own, and was about to present it to a client as original. This wasn't personal revenge anymore. This was fraud. And for once, I had something that would speak louder than gossip, something that would ruin him professionally, beyond recovery. But I wasn't ready to hand it over just yet. I wanted him to know it was me, that I was the one who'd found it, that the person he'd underestimated, lied to, manipulated, had been the one to end him. So I sent him one final text from an unknown number. Just one line. "Still think I don't know the whole story?" He didn't reply. Instead, that night, he showed up at my apartment. I hadn't expected that. I should have, but I didn't. It was late, almost midnight, when the knock came. I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there, disheveled, nothing like the confident man I'd once loved. I didn't open the door. He started talking through it, his voice low, almost broken. He said he'd lost everything, that I'd taken it too far. He said Sif was threatening legal action, that HR had suspended him, that he'd been blacklisted from his industry. "You won," he said through the door, his voice shaking. "You wanted to ruin me. Congratulations." I said nothing. I wanted to feel satisfaction, but all I felt was exhaustion. After a moment, he said something quieter, darker. "You don't know what you've done, Diana." And then he left. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I got a call from Sif. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She'd gone by his apartment after receiving another message from that same anonymous number, this one asking her to see him before it's too late. But when she got there, he was gone. His roommate said he'd packed his things and left before dawn. His phone was off. His car wasn't in the parking lot. No one had seen him since. Days passed, then weeks. He vanished completely. No social media, no emails, nothing. At first, I thought maybe he'd just run, embarrassed, desperate to start over somewhere new. But then weird things began happening again. I got an email from an address with no name, just a subject line, "You're not done yet." Inside was a photo of me leaving my building that same morning. My stomach dropped. Someone was watching me. I told myself it couldn't be Noah. He'd laughed, maybe even moved away, but the unease didn't fade. Sif texted me again saying she'd been getting similar emails, all with photos of her at work, on the street, even through her apartment window. We both went to the police, but there wasn't much they could do. No threats, just photos. Probably a prank, they said. I wanted to believe them, but every time I walked outside, I felt eyes on me. Then one night, I got another message from that same anonymous number, a video this time. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was security footage from outside my building, grainy and dark, but clear enough to make out a figure standing across the street. Noah. His posture, his build, unmistakable. The timestamp was from that morning. He hadn't left at all. He was here, watching me. And somehow, he wanted me to know it. That was the moment I realized my revenge wasn't over. It had only just begun. And this time, Noah wasn't the one being haunted. I was. At first, I thought it had to be a sick prank. Maybe someone had found the old photos from his Snapchat, or some bored friend decided to mess with me after hearing rumors. But deep down, I knew. The posture, the tilt of his head, the way he stood with one hand in his jacket pocket, it was Noah. The same stance I'd seen 100 times when he waited for me outside class. The same way he leaned against his car when he smiled like he had everything under control. Only this time, there was no smile. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with every light on, listening for footsteps, shadows shifting across the blinds. My phone buzzed at 3 a.m. Another email. This one had no text, just a photo of my window from across the street. I couldn't see the face of whoever took it, but the reflection on the glass showed the faint outline of someone holding a phone. The timestamp said 2 minutes ago. I called the police again, shaking, telling them someone was outside. When they arrived, they checked the perimeter. But of course, he was gone. No witnesses, no footprints, nothing. They told me to stay with someone for a few days, maybe a friend, just in case. I went to Seth's apartment that morning, dragging my suitcase and a half-whispered panic. She looked terrified when she opened the door because she'd gotten a message too. A single line. "You think you know revenge." We locked her doors, double-checked the windows, and sat in the silence of her tiny kitchen, both of us staring at our phones. I tried to convince myself that maybe Noah was just trying to scare us before disappearing for good. But then Sif told me something that made my stomach turn. She'd gone through old videos on her phone clips from when they'd been together and noticed something strange. In one of the hotel clips, she spotted a small camera blinking in the background on a table. She thought it was a charger. Now, she wasn't so sure. That's when we realized how deep this went. Noah wasn't just lying or cheating, he'd been recording, watching, keeping pieces of both of us long before we ever knew. The next week was a blur of paranoia. Every sound felt like a threat. Every face in a crowd looked like his. I changed my number, deleted social media, and filed another police report, this time with the digital evidence emails, photos, timestamps. They took it more seriously now, opening an investigation. They even traced one of the emails back to an IP address from a nearby public library. But when officers went to check the security cameras there, they found nothing. The footage for that day was missing. Someone had wiped it. That night, I found something on my car windshield, a folded note under the wiper. Inside, in Noah's handwriting, were 4 words. "Now you understand me." That's when I knew this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about control, about fear. He was turning my own plan against me, making me live in the same state of uncertainty I'd once forced on him. Sif wanted to run, to leave town, start over somewhere far away. But I couldn't let him win by making me disappear too. So I decided to fight back. I contacted an old friend, Evan, who studied cybersecurity and worked freelance tracking digital footprints. He agreed to help, setting up hidden trackers in my email to see where the messages were coming from, checking for any devices that might have been hacked. Within 2 days, he called me sounding unsettled. "Diana," he said, "whoever this is, they're not trying to hide. They want you to see how much access they have." The emails weren't from random accounts, they were coming from networks close to my location. He was nearby, watching. That same night, Evan called again, his voice tight. He'd found a hidden Bluetooth device pinging from my phone, something that had been paired months ago. When I checked the name, my throat went dry. Noah's AirPods. He must have sensed them at some point while we were together. They'd been tracking my location ever since. I ripped through my apartment searching for them, my hands shaking. I found one under the couch, covered in dust. The other was gone. I threw it in the sink and crushed it with a hammer. For the first time in months, I let myself cry, not out of heartbreak, but pure, consuming dread. The next morning, Evan texted that he'd traced a signal from one of the IP addresses. It led to an abandoned storage facility just outside the city, one that had been closed for renovations for over a year. Against his advice, I went there. I told myself I just needed proof, closure, something to hand to the police that would end this for good. When I got there, the building was silent. Rows of rusted doors, dust in the air, the hum of distant traffic. My footsteps echoed. I found the unique number Evan had sent me for 7B. The padlock was broken. My heart pounded as I pushed the door open. Inside was a folding chair, a stack of old boxes, and on the wall, a projection screen. A small projector sat on a crate. Humming softly, I stepped closer, and the screen lit up. It was a slideshow. Photos of me, some from my social media, some from our relationship, but others from places I didn't even know he'd been near. Me walking to class, me sitting at a cafe, me sleeping. The slideshow ended with a final image, a live camera feed of me standing in that very room, staring at the screen. Behind me, in the frame, a door slowly started to close. I spun around, my pulse exploding, but the room was empty. The sound of the door creaking shut echoed in the silence. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back in my car, shaking, gasping, tears burning down my face. I drove straight to the police, filed everything I had, begged them to take action. They promised to keep me under surveillance, at least for a few days, and I tried to believe that meant safety. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. My phone buzzed one last time before I finally turned it off for good. No number, just a single image. Me, asleep at Seth's apartment, from an angle that could only have been taken inside the room. The caption said, "Don't worry, I'll stop when you finally see." I didn't sleep for days after that photo. Every sound became a threat, every reflection a warning. Sif moved out of her apartment the next morning. She couldn't take it anymore. I didn't blame her. I stayed behind, not because I was brave, but because I refused to live as prey. I wanted to end this, no matter what it took. The police installed a camera outside my building and told me to call if I noticed anything strange. I noticed everything. The flicker of headlights that lingered too long, the way mail kept arriving half-opened, the faint scent of Noah's cologne when I stepped into the stairwell. It was like he was still there everywhere and nowhere all at once. Evan stayed in touch daily. He said he was tracing something big, that the same server Noah had used to send the messages was active again. 2 days later, he called, breathless. "Diana, you need to see this in person. Don't check your email." When I arrived at his place, he showed me what he'd found. The digital trail led not to Noah's personal account, but to a drive stored in the cloud, a folder named Diana Project. Inside were hundreds of files, labeled with dates, GPS coordinates, even emotional tags like calm, angry, crying. He'd been documenting me, every emotion, every place I went, every private moment. There were videos, too, short clips from angles that looked like hidden cameras. It was all meticulously archived like a psychological study. "He's been watching you for years," Evan whispered, "before you even knew he was cheating." That's when I realized what Noah meant by "now you understand me." It wasn't about revenge. It was obsession. I wasn't his victim or his opponent. I was his masterpiece. His creation. My entire reaction, my revenge, my fear. Every step I'd taken had been exactly what he wanted. I felt sick. We took everything to the police, who finally launched a formal cyber-stalking case. They told us they'd track the IPs, freeze his accounts, issue a warrant if they could find him. For the first time, I felt like maybe this would finally end. But the next day, Evan didn't answer his phone. Hours passed. I called, texted. Nothing. That evening, I went to his apartment. The lights were off, door unlocked. Inside, everything was neat except his laptop, still open on the desk. The screen showed a message that made my blood run cold. "He knows when you're alone too." I ran out and called the police. They searched the building, but Evan was gone. His car, his phone, his ID, all still there. Just gone. I didn't go home that night. I checked into a hotel under a different name, left my phone behind, paid cash. I sat in silence, trying to piece together how far Noah's reach could go. But that night, there was a knock at my hotel door. 3 quiet taps. My breath caught. The peephole showed no one. Then my phone, the one I'd left behind, buzzed at the front desk. The clerk said a man had dropped it off, saying, "She'll need this." I asked what he looked like. The clerk said, "Tall, dark hair, polite." I didn't take the phone. I ran. I drove aimlessly for hours until dawn broke, parked at a gas station, and finally let the tears fall. For the first time, I felt truly broken. I had destroyed Noah's image, Yes, but he had taken something far more valuable: my sense of safety, my trust in my own reality. Still, I couldn't let him vanish again. I needed to end it properly, so I used what he loved most: control. With Evan's data backups and my own files, I compiled everything, every message, video, timestamp, and uploaded them to a public drive. I sent the link to every news outlet, every forum, every anonymous submission board I could find. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Headlines called it the stalker boyfriend case. Comment sections filled with disbelief, pity, outrage. For the first time, Noah's name wasn't followed by admiration, it was followed by disgust. He had nowhere to hide. The police called me 2 days later. They'd traced activity from one of the accounts linked to the drive. It was accessing from a small cabin 3 hours north of the city. They were sending officers. I insisted on going. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see him, needed to know he was real, not some phantom haunting the edges of my mind. When we arrived, the cabin was quiet. The officers went in first, guns drawn. Minutes later, one of them called me inside. The smell of decay hit immediately. There was dust everywhere, stacks of old notebooks, wires, a projector screen, and on a chair by the window Noah, lifeless, no struggle, no mess, just him, sitting upright, a small smile frozen on his face, phone in hand. The screen glowed with a half-written text addressed to me. "Now you see it all." The officers said it looked like he'd been there for days. I should have felt relief, closure, something, but instead, there was just emptiness. The walls were lined with photos of me, Seth, even Evan, pages of notes, like a script he'd been directing. Everything I'd done, my posts, my revenge, my fear, it was all mapped out. He'd predicted every move. When they handed me his phone as evidence, I hesitated. Then I saw the last photo in his gallery. It was from the night before, taken outside my hotel room door. My heart stopped. The timestamp was 1 hour after I'd heard the knock, meaning he was still alive when I ran. I left the cabin and never looked back. Weeks have passed now. The case went public. People moved on, and the world returned to normal. But not for me, because last night I got an email. No name, no address, just an attachment. It was a photo, my new apartment window, and written across the glass in faint reflection were the words, "Now it's your turn."